Excellent. Okay, so good morning. Welcome to our latest in the series of webinars featuring our Built for NetSuite partners. My name is Gary Hawksford. I'm sales manager here at BrightBridge, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Workiro. Workiro is a next generation app. It combines your task, communication, document management capabilities, helps you work better together. And today I'm joined on the webinar by Jason from the Workiro team. He's going to be delivering a talk and a live demonstration on the Workiro Outlook integration tool. If you've got any questions during the webinar, pop them in the chat and or message me directly, and we'll go through them in a question and answer segment at the end of the session. Finally, I am recording the session, so but there's nobody with webcams on anyway, but be aware of that. And if you could go on mute, I think everybody is anyway. And that's pretty much, I think, about it. I'll hand you over now to Jason, who'll take you through the presentation and demonstration.
Thanks very much, Gary. And first off, thank you very much to BrightBridge for having us. I'm going to walk through our Outlook integration, which is part of our Microsoft Office integration. First off, we're going to go through an agenda. At rehearsals, this took around about 15-20 minutes max to go through. Gary's done a great job of introducing us. My name's Jason, CIO of Workiro. We're a NetSuite customer and have been for a long time. As a business, we've been doing document management for around about 20 years, storing emails and documents that are created within businesses. From our agenda perspective, this format is going to be relatively straightforward. We're going to do a little bit about the problem that we're looking to solve today, talk a bit more about what Workiro is. Then we're going to do an actual first-hand demonstration of our Outlook integration, including with a focus on NetSuite. And then we're going to look at some of the other stuff that we can help with, talk about pricing, and then, as Gary mentioned, questions and answers from there. I think Gary will interrupt me if anyone asks a question that we feel needs to be answered in a timely fashion. Other than that, when we get to the Q&A session, we can go through the answers. Okay, let's move on from the big picture of me for a second because it's a little bit off-putting. First off, let's talk about the problem that we're here to talk about. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we're NetSuite customers. We're also Salesforce and Zendesk customers. We have implemented best of breed technology and been working with NetSuite customers over the last 12 months who are using it from end to end. That ERP system does a great job, of course, of looking after your general ledger, your transactions, your CRM, all of those great stuff. But there is a huge amount of things that happen in business that are beyond the reach of your ERP system. That can be key information or documents or files stored in any of these things. So from team chat like Microsoft Teams or Slack, through to file transfer tools, e-signatures. And today we're just going to focus on one of those, which is email. Now, all of those things are currently untracked, buried, disconnected, maybe sitting in someone's inbox, for example, that might have left the business. All key communication that may be happening with a customer and or a vendor that you really want to be visible to your whole team. So before I go on to demonstrate how we've solved that problem, a little bit more about Workiro. By the way, you can say it however you want, but Workiro is a hybrid app. That means it exists on its own, but also has a deep integration with NetSuite. It helps you establish a repository to control your business communications, documents, and approvals, all tagged, tracked, recorded, and ideal for those that are looking to help with compliance and looking to complement their ISO 27001 or 9001 certificates as well. We won Partner of the Year at SuiteWorld last year for our innovation, and I'm going to show you why now. Okay, let's get down to business. So I'm going to do a live demonstration. We're going to start actually in my NetSuite system. So here I'm going to concentrate on vendors, but I would like to emphasize that everything I show you today also works on customers and partners. And Workiro does also exist in your favorite transactions on both the sales and purchase side of NetSuite. But for today, for our demonstration of our Outlook integration, we're just going to focus on the vendor file. So here in my sandbox, I have Computers Extreme, which is one of my favorite vendors. With Workiro, you get a new tab, and that is like a new alternative to File Cabinet for those that are familiar or use that currently. This tab allows you to store your documents and transactions, all version controlled. We have unlimited storage, by the way, so you can store as much in there as you want. You can simply drag and drop into here, and you can use some clever tagging systems and search filters to be able to break down and define that potentially a very mature file, because Computers Extreme might be a vendor we've been working with for a decade. We want to create a nice filing system in here that puts the latest files at the top, gives us great categorization, and has full version and history in here as well. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take an Outlook email in a second, and I'm going to file it into this area for Computers Extreme. So that's the first step. So if I go into my Outlook system, so I have an email that's coming through here, which is a new contract agreement in my Outlook system. It's worth pointing out for this demonstration, I'm currently on a Windows operating system and have the Outlook application installed. In here, if I have the email, I can open the email if I want, see the same options, but we have a Workiro add-in, and these two buttons appear for your emails. Now here, I've got the option to either add an email or take attachments if there are attachments on their own. So if I click each one of these options, both have the same options on them, but for now, I'm going to add the email. The difference being is, I know it sounds obvious, but there's a lot of text in this body of this email. I want to store the whole communication so that my colleagues or myself can open that up later on, reply and forward to it within Outlook. I don't want to just store the contract agreement because there's some extra information here as a business about a conversation with Jane. So I can simply click add on this option to store this contract agreement. Workiro jumps in and grabs the subject line and suggests that that's the title, but I'm actually going to come into here and say 2022 contract agreement. And I'm going to tag it against my Computers Extreme vendor, which list is coming from NetSuite. I'm going to make it visible to my team, and also I'm going to tag it as a contract. And by doing that and saving it, what I've now done is it'll open that file up. However, if I go back to NetSuite, in here, if I do just refresh this documents area, you'll see that I now have an email stored with a contract tag for the 2022 contract agreement. Now, at the moment, I'm showing the me filter because I filed it. However, if I went to team, because that's visible to team, I would see anything that the team had filed. And if I've just joined the business, that obviously would be really important because I can see all of the history for that vendor. At this point, that document or that MSG file is under full version control. As you'll see down here, if I now click on the contracts tag, I can now see just anything that's on this vendor file that's been associated with the contract tag. Okay, so that's step one, and it's probably our simplest use case. Now, there are other ways of doing it. You can simply drag and drop into that file, but I want to show you now what most of our NetSuite customers do with emails and where they find some extra value, and it shows you a bit more what Workiro is all about, because document storage for us is just the start. So I'm going to take you to another vendor that I have here. I'm just going to refresh this so that I don't get kicked out. On the Workiro tab in this vendor file, called Bayer Healthcare, I actually have some work going on. I have a task between myself and Max, which is a vendor checklist, which has an Excel spreadsheet attached to it. If I open that up, there's a conversation and some reminders that have gone back internally, all stored and categorized for anyone else to come along and see and join in. In the documents area, I've got a whole bunch of price lists filed and project schedules and tax calcs. In projects calcs. In here, I could go and create new tasks in there off the back of them. However, what I'm now going to do is show you one of our most popular features back to Outlook. And we're going to use an invoice here. but I just want to pause for a second. I'm using invoice because it's the easiest thing for people to relate to. However, we have customers that are doing exactly this same process for customer order queries, for inquiries coming from warehouses. It doesn't really matter to us, but ultimately I'm going to use this example to file an email, but actually do some action off the back of it. And what we found, particularly internally with ourselves and with the NetSuite customers that we've been working with, is that quite often, or more often than not, there is a central finance mailbox or more, where emails come back in, queries come back in to transactions like invoices that are going out, for the finance team to deal with, but they don't necessarily deal with it themselves. They need to pass that on internally for that query to be dealt with. So in this case, I've got an invoice coming in from Bayer Healthcare vendor, and I really want to query this with my colleague Jill and make sure that she understands that if we don't do it to pay this, then there's going to be a 5% charge. So back to the same functionality at the top here, but I'm going to pick new thread. And this is where we actually create some action off the back of this email. Same happens again, but this time this pops up. I'm going to get rid of the text that our email system puts in to warn that it's external. We bring the body of the email into the first comment, and the subject line, everything's sort of pre-populated. We do file the MSG, which is the email itself, so that you can see the entire history. But we also bring any attachments out on their own and put them there, so that when I ask Jill to review this, and really Jill just wants to look at the invoice, you can see the 5% charge in the text, she can jump straight onto the invoice without having to go buried into the email. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my colleague Jill in, who's part of my team, and I'm going to assign the task to Jill. I'm also going to put a due date of today. What that will do is manage Jill's expectations on when I think this needs to be done. And also, just so you're aware, if Jill doesn't do anything with this, our reminder system will tell her every 3 days to pick this up. It will use terminology based on that due date, whether things are overdue or due today. I'm also going to put this in my Bayer Healthcare vendor file, so that that's filed against there. And I'm also going to tag it with my vendor bill tag. And there you can see, not only is the work going to be stored against Jill, it's also going against Bayer Healthcare, and it's going against vendor bill. So when I click create, what will now happen, you may hear a little ping in the background. That's my iPad, which I know you can't see, but Jill has the iPad app installed for Workiro. That's come through nice and live. You can see it's now been seen by Jill. She says on it, and that is all now live. And if I close that down, go back to NetSuite on my Bayer Healthcare for the rest of the business to see, there is an in progress invoice query between me and Jill that everyone can see if they go to team, by the way, where we can click in here, see the conversation that's going back and forth. But more importantly, if someone's just coming into the documents area, these documents are there automatically. So I didn't file that MSG there. I did not file that invoice there. That is part of work that we know is tagged to this customer, sorry, to this vendor. So therefore it appears on here under the vendor bill tag automatically. I'd also like to point out, you can store a task and documents against as many customers or vendors or mix. So you can store a task again, if there's a dropship query, you may store it against a customer and a vendor and potentially a third-party delivery company, for argument's sake. The beauty of the way we've designed Workiro as well is that at the moment I'm sort of monitoring my vendor file on my home tab. The reason I've got the home tab up here is this will tell me everything that I'm responsible for doing in my portlet, and my catch-up system will catch me up on everything I've missed. So all of the comments and things that I may have not seen across all of my customers and vendors. So with that being said,
sorry
yeah,
to
sure.
We just had a question come up which I think is relevant to what you've just
Great.
been doing there. We've been asked in that example with the vendor bill, does Jill need to have I assume that Jill does not have to be a NetSuite user, if that's
Correct.
going to yeah.
Correct. Jill doesn't need to be a NetSuite user. Jill also doesn't need to have a Workiro license if you just want her to action a task. Jill is part of my team in this case, so Jill does have a Workiro license and a NetSuite license. But what I can do, as long as I'm just adding an email address in instead of adding Jill, I can add an email address in. And even though Jill's in my business, but not in my team, it will interact with Jill through an email that's fully branded and secure. And Jill would not need to create an account, just like if you use DocuSign or a signing app to get something signed externally. So if the reason why Jill would need an account is if she wants to discover and keep an eye on her tasks in here or on the app that I just had as well. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay, great. So from our perspective, that's the end of our sort of Outlook demonstration. The only bits that we didn't show is the fact you can do all of that, but with attachments on their own. So use cases for that on attachments are where a vendor may send you a PDF to sign. You can take that attachment, turn it into a signature task and send it straight back to them securely without having to email them back. And guess what? It's all signed and stored on the vendor file automatically. So that's the end of our demonstration. Now, looking here at what we do is hopefully you've got a good exposure to how we store documents, because an email to us is just like a document. But we also do advanced tasks. We've got integration with the full Outlook system, and we've got e-signing and communication all built into our app. NetSuite customers use us to help with contract management, supplier management, customer order management, and many more. So from our perspective, the last thing to do is talk about pricing, because we like to be straightforward, easy to use product, but also our pricing is transparent. Our pricing is £23 per user per month billed annually, so £276 per year. And in the demonstration system that I've just done, myself and Jill had a license, but if you had 1,000 customers, that's seen as being guest users. They don't pay for it. Or if you had someone that just needed to approve a task or a document internally, they also wouldn't need a license. That also includes implementation and support. So that is all of the costs. There are no limits to our storage or volume either. Okay, I guess thanks for the question, Gary. It's always best to do it in time. Were there any others?
Just have a quick check through. I guess one of them has been covered on there was, does everybody in my business need a license for Workiro? So you've answered that one, I think, already. The other one was, how does it work across different types of devices? So mobiles, Macs, that sort of thing. Any restrictions?
Yeah, good question. So our application, although I showed you it in the web browser and embedded with inside of NetSuite, and we also have apps on Windows, Mac, Android, and we have iOS as well. So we have native applications that are fully functional, by the way. They're not just companion apps. And an example that I just did with Jill now, I used that app to authorize and get push notifications. So that's where they come into their own, really, because those notifications, either from a customer signing a document or from someone approving something, can be a push notification on your device, which of course you can control, rather than being buried somewhere in your email amongst all of the other noise.
Excellent. And what about web-based Outlook? How do things work there?
Yeah, we have an add-in for that that will install. That also covers Mac as well, but we can have an add-in that you can install from the store into Outlook. It looks slightly different, but it does a similar job.
And you've also talked very briefly about e-signatures. So a question has come in: could Workiro support the signing of contract documents by customers, or would we need another app for the actual signing?
Yeah, good question. So no, absolutely wouldn't need another app. That's another one of our features that we'll be doing a webinar probably dedicated just to signatures. But you can take transactions from within NetSuite, turn them into a PDF file with a click of a button, and get those signed by your customers without them needing to create an account. And they basically get the same environment you do, all branded, all secure, and all with full read access, so you can see whether a customer has viewed the task or viewed the signature all within inside of your NetSuite system. You don't have to start the process from NetSuite, by the way. We also have a Word integration, which is very similar to the Outlook one, where if you've got a contract or a template sitting in Word, you can start the process from Microsoft Word or a PDF that you have on your desktop.
Excellent. And the costs for that?
That's included in the price. So that's all included in that £23 per user per month.
Perfect. Okay.
Great.
Right. I think that's sort of all of the questions at the moment. So I'll start to sort of wrap up. Obviously, Jason's got his contact details there on the screen, and obviously you'll have your account manager's contact details or ours at BrightBridge. So if there are any other further questions that haven't been answered or something that crops to mind later on, please get in touch with us. But thanks for taking the time to attend our webinar today. If you've got any further questions, send those through. Next webinar in our series will actually be the new year now, so we'll send out details of those in due course through our normal sort of communications. We will be conducting a short demonstration of our Dunnings functionality. That's on the 23rd of November. So it's not a built for NetSuite app. It's part of our own solution for that. Again, if that's of interest, please let us know and we'll make sure that you receive an invite to that. One of the things that we've discussed as well with Workiro is maybe looking at different elements of their functionality in more detail. Such as the document management, etc. Again, if that's of interest, please drop a message in the chat if there's any particular area that you'd like to see a demonstration of, and that's something that we can organise for the new year as well. Other than that, I think there's not more left for me to do other than to thank everyone for attending today. Thank you, Jason, for your presentation demonstration. I certainly found it useful, and I think from the questions that have come through, it's been useful for a lot of the people attending too.
Having me.
Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you very much for your time, everybody. Hope you found it useful. And as I say, we'll be in touch with more webinars for the new year shortly.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.